Roll call, please.
Curry. Here. Adel.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Avedisian.
Here.
Lozano.
Here.
Buell. Bush.
Here.
Clark. Side. Bella. Drake.
Here.
Gale. Cardo. Gentile.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Hoffman. Here. Oheb. Holloway.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
LaChance.
Here.
Lester.
Here.
Lewis. Magnan. Mandyke.
Here.
Maniscalco. Payne.
Here.
Patel.
Here.
Salemi.
Here.
Stuber.
Here.
Taylor.
Here.
Torres.
Here.
Wolf. Here. Carrier. We have a quorum.
Mail just came. Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
The flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see so many smiling faces at our table tonight. Next on the agenda is the approval of meeting minutes from April 1st.
So moved, Adel.
Second.
Discussion, additions, deletions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. District Chairman's report. I have no report at this time. Report from, oh, pardon me? Oh, I'm sorry, public comments relative to agenda items. Judy, don't forget. Judy. Nice to see you here.
Judy Allen, West Hartford. Just a couple things. First, there's always the chairman report and the CEO report. And the chairman for the last few years hasn't had any report. And it would be nice to hear even just what your priorities are. And in terms of the CEO report, it's very hard to make a comment about something that you don't know is going to be discussed. So if there's any way to clue people in a little bit on what you're going to talk about, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board on agenda items?
Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Bryden, and I'm an MDC customer and homeowner in West Hartford. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to comment on agenda item number 12B regarding retroactive reimbursement for customer sewer repairs. As many of you are aware, I've attended many different MDC committee meetings and shared comments for about a year now, in an attempt to get reimbursed for an issue that I had that began in January 2023 that resulted in a bill for over $12,000 that I paid to replace a sewer pipe in the woods on someone else's property. I believe you already have the details about this issue in the minutes from previous meetings, so I won't repeat them all. But I would like to advocate in support of allowing retroactive reimbursement as part of the house sewer connection program. When the new sewer ordinances were approved in July 2023, they provided financial relief to homeowners who need to make repairs to the sewer laterals on their property. But up until now, they have not addressed the issue of retroactive reimbursement for repairs that have already been made out of necessity. In my case, had the sewage backup in our house happened just a few months later, it would have likely been covered. Given that the sewer house connection program now provides homeowners with financial support for repairs to their laterals, I believe retroactive reimbursement for repairs should also be allowed for a reasonable time period prior to the implementation of the new program. In support of this, I would also reference the new Hartford Sewerage System Repair and Improvement Fund, which, as I understand it, allows homeowners who have been impacted by damage on or after January 2021 to apply for reimbursement. This program allows for reimbursement for some MDC customers, and I believe the sewer house connection program should too. Given that there's a precedent for MDC paying for repairs to homeowners' laterals, as well as precedents for retroactive reimbursement for homeowners affected by sewer issues and repairs, I would again advocate that retroactive reimbursement for repairs be allowed under the sewer house connection program, as well, or as an alternative, at least that my case be considered as a special circumstance. Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts today and hope you take them into consideration.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? On screen, anyone?
I did raise my hand.
Mr. Dirksen?
Yes, hi, thank you.
Yes.
Gregory Dirksen, I live at 290 Wolcott Hill Road in Wethersfield. I want to speak on item 10, the petition on Wolcott Hill Road. I urge the board to support this request of these 5 homeowners in Wethersfield for the installation and connection to an MDC sewer line. Given the immediate need of this work and the lack of action that was taken in the past, I'm advocating for your expediency to plan and address the issues that are facing these properties, which could have been corrected with previous action on the repeated requests and now have to be addressed with some immediacy. At least 3 of the 5 homes are in dire need of this issue to be addressed, with either failed or failing septic and or leaching fields. Obviously, these systems have expiration dates and are in need of maintenance, but the current state of these properties could have been prevented and would have made this request for city sewer to be proactive rather than now a reactive request. Our systems in their current state pose, of course, risks to contaminating the groundwater, surface water, pollution, habitat degradation, and potential human health risks. Our properties are on a heavily traveled road in Wethersfield, close to both the Wethersfield Middle School and high school campuses. And it is, of course, unacceptable that these properties pose a near potential risk to the community we live in and are near because of the systems that could have been connected in the past and need to be connected now. So please support our need for the city sewer to be installed so that our properties can connect as soon as possible. We ask for your quick response and prompt action so the installation can begin as immediately as it can be scheduled. This issue has already cost me $12,000 worth of damage in my basement alone, maybe more if it continues, and I'm worried every day that it'll fail to the point of an immeasurable damage. I thank you for listening and for your anticipated support.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? Okay, we'll move on now to.
I would also like to speak on behalf of item number 10. I'm also a resident of Wethersfield at 298 Wolcott Hill. I have been
Would you
contacting
please
the
state your
MDC.
name for the record?
I apologize. My
Ma'am.
name is Julie Flynn.
Thank you.
I've been contacting the MDC since we bought this house back in 2007 and had many failed attempts to get action taken on this. We have been living in fear for 17 years that our sewer or our septic system will fail. It's now 100 years old. I'm on a 1/4 acre lot. I do not have a fallback plan. I need access to the sewer. I'm a neighbor of Mr. Dirksen's. There are 5 of us that are stuck on this very small section of Wolcott Hill Road where we are absolutely isolated and do not have access to connect to the sewer line. It's not a tenable situation. This is a public utility that we need to have access to. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on now to number 7, report from Chief Executive Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be quick. I know we got a long agenda. So we've been talking about a number of issues regarding Pulaski Circle and flooding in Pulaski Circle. We finally just had a meeting with DOT's engineers and their consultants last week to talk about what their schedule is. They have told us that they're doing traffic survey, they're going to be doing design, and really won't be doing any construction activity on Pulaski Circle until 2028. So the other question we asked them was, there was some discussions, there was articles in the paper regarding a future walkway or bridge from East Hartford over to Pulaski Circle. They told us that's even farther out. So there's no anticipation of that impacting us in the near future. So what we have said to them is, in anticipation of some of our developments like Bushnell South and 525 here, Main Street, we need, this system needs to be upgraded. The storm system is owned by the DOT, and they need to upgrade that as part of the Pulaski Circle project. So we're hopeful they will do that. We also are planning to have a meeting with CRDA, Mike Freemuth, on the Pulaski Circle, on the Bushnell South development over on Capitol Avenue. And then in terms of just good news, working through Chris and Brendan with the legislature. We're anticipating regime flow issues in the Farmington River, recreation, fishing, all those good things that's been occurring every year since January of 2019 when we've exited the Army Corps agreement. We have been working, we've mentioned numerous times with the legislature, Senator Seminara and with Representative Anderson to find a solution, interim solution to possible word or legislation that removes us with Congress's support from the Army Corps agreement. So we're very close. We've been talking on an interim solution for this summer. We're talking with DEEP, we're talking with the Army Corps, some language back and forth about how we could get the Army Corps to accept a request from DEEP. Chris will talk about that with the bill that was passed. So that's very positive news, at least for the summer. Everyone should have received an email invite. We will not be mailing out invitations to the ribbon cutting for Barber Street, 179 Barber Street, which is our community outreach building. So we're very anticipation of that. We have invited the mayor's office, the governor's office. The governor's office has indicated they could not attend, but all of the outreach teams, we're utilizing our outreach groups, the city, to make sure we're not missing anybody and making sure everybody's invited. So we're very excited about that. It is at 10 a.m. ribbon cutting, assuming we have good weather. Number three, I mentioned presenting. I did the opening remarks for the WEF conference here in Hartford. Big deal because it's a national conference and we held it here in Hartford, which is it's very exciting. Just some takeaways. Everybody was amazed. Susan did a tour of the tunnel. We didn't go in the tunnel, but just did a tour of the construction site. But the one takeaway in all of this is no one in the country is spending $1.8 billion and has spent $1.8 billion in our clean water program. So they're very impressed with that. One of the, surprisingly, but I'm not surprised because every time we go to these conferences, the number one problem is finding qualified operators, water and wastewater in the industry. It's a major problem across the country. And we presented on the Tri-Trade program that we have and built with the city of Hartford and the tech schools. We've talked about this in numerous meetings. Everybody wanted to know how we're doing it, and it was a big hit. So kudos to our staff and everything they're doing. And then in terms of NACWA, just was in NACWA in Providence this past week. Same discussion, except the EPA and the state of Connecticut DEEP were there. So it was an opportunity for all of us to have a discussion around issues. And they asked me to talk specifically about funding because even Boston, which is Deer Island, they serve 60 communities. Our dry weather flow is 80 MGD. Their dry weather flow is 300 million. And their wet weather flow is 3 billion and ours is 200 million. So they haven't even spent 1.8 billion. They've only spent $900 million. So we are really, a lot of people are taking notice as to what we have done in this city, in this region. Ironically, it was great to hear everything that we have done in North Hartford, meaning remove stormwater at the source, not build CSO tunnels anymore, use that money to separate. EPA admitted in these meetings, Dave Cash, who's the administrator of New England. He was here in North Hartford meeting with the community. He admits, his staff admits that the right solution to the problem with the sewer system is stormwater, is to remove stormwater at the source. So it was interesting to hear regulators admit that after the 1972 Clean Water Act, which we spent all this money to achieve. So very, very positive issues. PFAS, big issue regarding a land application of PFAS, especially in Maine, New Hampshire, all of the farming states. You can't land apply in Connecticut anyways. However, big discussion about the affordability. Providence, our counterparts in Providence, Rhode Island, are predicting that right now we charge about just under $500 per dry ton of solids that come into our facility. They're predicting it going to $1,500, all because of the PFAS. There's no land application. And just so happens during the WEF meeting, there was a white paper done during the WEF conference that has done it at a number of different locations like ours, multi-hearth incinerators, that they've tested, and there is no ash. There is no PFAS in the ash. So very positive things moving forward in the industry, but it is an issue. And then just a reminder, this again, we say this all the time, May 9th, which is Thursday, right? May 9th, we're going to be doing a presentation on Stormwater Authority. And as I said, in Providence, and it's the stormwater, silly. The issues that are driving the discussions around sewer systems is not sewer, it's stormwater. And we're going to be talking a lot about a positive discussion about why we think it's important for the MDC region to get ahead of this, because it's coming, regulations coming. And when EPA admits in public that it's the stormwater that's causing the problem, they're focusing on stormwater, and they're going to start to regulate it. And it's going to become a very expensive regulation. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Scott. On the stormwater meeting, could you just give us some idea of who's been invited to this?
Yes, thank you. So we've invited all the commissioners, and we've invited all the town mayors and or town managers and their engineers. So we did not invite the public, but it's a public meeting. So anybody obviously could show up, but that's what we invited.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, before we move on to the district council report, I'd be remiss if I didn't say and let you know that last week I had the opportunity and the pleasure of meeting with the mayor of Hartford, and with me, I had Chairman Salemi from Finance, Chairman Adel from Water, Chairman Hoffman from BPW, and Chairman Gentile from Strategic Plan. And the mayor was very gracious. He gave us an hour of his time, which was far more than I expected. I know how busy he is. But I thought the meeting was very positive, very productive. I think that it's evident that we're going to be able to partner with the city of Hartford through the mayor's office much better than we have in the past. So I'm looking forward to working with anyone who's connected with the city of Hartford and through the mayor's office. So thank you. Now move on to district council report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris Stone, District Council. On the agenda is I called out a particular item, which is under 8A. This involves a lands exchange between the MDC and the Connecticut Aviation Authority, or Airport Authority, excuse me, Airport Authority. This goes back some years, and some of you probably weren't here back in 2015 as a member of the board. But just to give you a little background, the MDC needed a swath, a 100-foot swath along the east-west runway adjacent to our treatment plant in order to serve as a laydown area during some major clean water project construction, and for the installation of piping that's going to support the tunnel and the movement of tunnel flow from one side of the street to the other side of the street. We approached the Connecticut Airport Authority. They were interested in, they gave us the easement, so let's start there. They gave us the easement, which has helped us, certainly facilitated our construction job. But then we discussed, and this board approved, a long-term exchange or solution whereby we would keep that 100-foot swath along the East Coast runway. And in exchange for that, we would give to the CAA a piece of our treatment facility site that we no longer use. And that's the former Ash Lagoon, which even to this day, we don't use anymore. So it allowed us to maintain our infrastructure by way of ownership, not just an easement. It allowed us to have the laydown area. And this will allow for the housing authority, or just housing authority, the airport authority to expand or extend the runway so that they are arguably, and I'm not an aviation expert, but arguably they would have, be able to accommodate larger aircraft. That's what they tell me, so that's their benefit. So that was 2015. We reached an agreement. It was approved by this board. The closing date was contingent upon the MDC finishing its contractual work or its project, which was I think that was contract 2 of the Clean Water Project. And also each party, particularly MDC, in terms of the Ash Lagoon, performing restoration work, site cleaning, same for the CAA's parcel as well. So there was some site work to do. Well, it's on the agenda tonight because over the course of the past several months, we have reached, I don't want to say an impasse because we just haven't heard from CAA, quite frankly. And we have a project manager on the job who's been trying to reach out to CAA to get some feedback on where we are. No response. I've attempted to contact CAA through their attorney to find out where we are. No response. All the environmental work reports have been completed. We're ready to consummate the deal. And I finally, out of, I suppose, frustration on not just my part, but the manager's part, I sent an email to the attorney for the airport authority saying I was putting this on the agenda for tonight. It's going to be specifically referenced on the agenda. And unless I hear from them otherwise, I'm going to approach my client and advise them of what their options are now that assuming the impasse continues. Well, lo and behold, just last week, I heard from the lawyer for the airport authority. There is movement. There's some minor tweaks to the environmental reports that have to be made. That's in the process of being done. I hope to report to you within the next 2 months, plus or minus, that we've closed the deal. But I thank you for putting on the agenda because you're allowing this to be on the agenda is really what made them move forward. So this was supposed to be a much more detailed, substantive report on what your options are if it doesn't happen. Certainly more optimistic now that it's going to happen after the events of last week. So thank you for that. Any questions on that before I move on? Okay. The tunnel litigation is on track for a trial-ready month of January 2025. That doesn't mean we're going to have a trial in January of 2025, but we have to be ready to have a trial in January of 2025. We're presently in the discovery phase, which, as you can imagine, with a project of this magnitude is quite extensive. We've agreed to a protocol, ESI protocol, they call it, where we exchange documents based upon word searches of emails and the like to make sure that we disclose to them and they disclose to us all the pertinent, relevant emails, communications that are non-privileged that we're going to need to defend the claim. We're going to need to prosecute our claim, our counterclaim, and then them for the same reasons, to prosecute their claim and defend our counterclaim. The motion, I had alluded, I think a couple months ago, to a motion that was going to be filed in the federal court. It's called a Rule 56 motion. It's akin to a state motion for summary judgment. That's been filed by us. I'll be sending out a copy to each of you. It provides a good summary of the facts of the case. If many of you know, all of you, I'm sure know some parts of it, if not all of it, but this gives you a nice summary of how we got to where we are. They have until May 31st to respond to our motion, and then we have 15 days thereafter to file a response to their response. So, but the case itself is on track. On the landfill, June 7th, we have a hearing before the State Claims Commissioner. He is going to hear a case, and I call this case number 2. This is the case that involves the change in the rate structure for the landfill discharge fee. That'll be heard on the 7th. He's the new claims commissioner, and he's doing a very good job in terms of moving things along. Been very responsive to requests for status conferences. We've had 2 status conferences since the beginning of the year. We've now set it down for a hearing on June 7th. So he's doing a yeoman's effort to clear up some backlog and to get these cases like this moving along. And then finally, as Scott alluded to, there's a bill in the legislature on the Colebrook issue. It was really a bill from the state senator in the northwest corner and state representative out of Barkhamsted to compel DEEP to make a request for discharges in the event that there's a need for increasing flows to the Farmington River. DEEP has been reluctant to do that in the past. Their claim is that they're only there for flood control, and that's really not the case. But that being said, it directs them to make the request of the Army Corps of Engineers for sufficient discharges, or at least in their mind, discharges that will enhance the viability of the Farmington River for fishermen and the fish, etc. That bill is only as good as Army Corps response, right? So they can make the request, but the state legislature can't compel Army Corps to release the water. So it gets part of the way there, it doesn't get all the way there. So what we've been working on, Army Corps wanted a letter from the MDC that says you can release, telling Army Corps, you can release part of our 10 million gallons, or billion gallons, excuse me, that we've reserved. Obviously, that's counterintuitive to where we are with the Army Corps in the Colebrook River Reservoir Dam. We're out. That's our claim, and that's what we're using to support this amendment that will, before Congress, hopefully on the next WRDA bill, which should come up in the fall. So we just weren't going to tell them that they can release our water because our water doesn't exist there anymore. At least the water is there. It's not ours. So we had to draft a letter that basically says, recognize that we don't own it anymore, that we've abandoned the water. The water's still there, but we've abandoned that as a water supply to the NDC. But we would have, it's legalese, we would have no objection if they release water from wherever they want to release it, right? Whether it's the lower part of the reservoir, which is the 3.5 billion that we retained, or part of the 10, or part of the Deep's. Deep has an elevation that's just above ours, or our former elevation. Whether it's Deep's water, doesn't matter. And that seemed to satisfy them, and so that bill is on track. And the idea here is there was a lot of concern, and Scott alluded to it, about regime flows while the NDC is in this kind of limbo position, and even after the MDC leaves, hopefully come the fall. Who's gonna monitor the flows coming out of the river? It's been the MDC for decades. We tell the Army Corps what has to be released. We understand what our riparian rights obligations are. We understand what the flows of the river should be. We understand what our charter requirements are for minimum discharges to the Farmington River. We were the ones that were directing the ship there. We're not going to be there, hopefully not too much longer. And we certainly don't want to exercise that authority now when we've said it's not ours. So the people that use the Farmington River are concerned about what regime flow there will be, how many millions of gallons of water you're going to release every month. But just as importantly, who's going to release it? So we've been working on, with Scott and his group on the technical side, on really documenting what has been the regime flow, and then sharing that with those individuals, those stakeholders in the northwest part of the state, with DEEP, with the Army Corps. This is what we've done. You may not have recognized what we've done in the past, but here's what we've done in terms of releases. That should be the regime going forward, at least in the short term. If you want to develop some other regime from 2025 and beyond, that's entirely up to you. But at least in the short term, we seem to have a resolution of what can be a very difficult decision-making process, particularly where decisions may have to be made in a matter of days or weeks. If there's a drought, for example, there was a drought last year, and it was like almost panic amongst the stakeholders. Fortunately, the week before, the week before a decision was made to do nothing, because we weren't going to do it and Army Corps wasn't going to do it, it rained. So the crisis was averted by an act of God, but you can't count on that always happening. So that's the status on that bill. And that's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. If anyone has any questions, I'm here.
Any questions? Thank you, Chris.
To you, Mr. Chairman.
We're not looking for any action tonight on land swap.
Mr. Patel wants, no.
Go ahead.
I think all these things which we used to do, it won't be done. Some point in time, problem will occur, and then we will be blamed. What have we done to notify all these people openly, so that including newspapers, particularly Hartford Current is not our friends. Always negative, they pick it up. And eventually something breaks loose, they are going to blame us. So we should start public relation issues right now on that.
Which one, Commissioner?
On when we get out.
The Colebrook, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, both my office, in particular, and Scott's office, and his people that are working in trenches up in Barkhamsted, doing the job, right? We've notwithstanding what appears to be a rather tense adversarial relationship with the Army Corps of Engineers, the people on the ground are still doing their job. We've had, in order for us to get to where we are, and primarily I'm talking about the granting of the abandonment petition from last year, we weren't going to be able to do that without support from the environmentalists, from the representatives and senators from that area of the state. And we put a lot of work into that relationship with the environmentalists, our political relationship with the policymakers from that part of the state, and with our Washington team, congressmen, our senators, and working through Patton Boggs, Steve Bonafonte in my office, and getting this to a point where we're close, we're real close. But to your point, one of the reasons why you don't hear a lot about problems along the Farmington River is because of what we've been able to accomplish through people like Tim Anthony, for example, who's been up there for a couple of decades at least, Scott, right? Yeah. So, I mean, those people in the trenches are doing the work, and there hasn't been a problem, except that one recent example of the drought last year, which was saved by a heavy rainfall. But that was in part because of the dynamic between us and the Army Corps at the time. No one wanted to make it. We weren't going to make a decision that was against our legal interests. We weren't going to exercise authority and control over a body of water, a section of that lake that we wanted to abandon, and that we, by contract, gave them notice that we were getting out. So, and the Army Corps didn't want to do the opposite. They didn't want to exercise control. They said, "You do it, MDC." So there was a stalemate that hopefully this year will be averted, because quite frankly, it probably shouldn't have been the issue it was last year.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Bush, am I to interpret correctly that there is no mechanism currently to release water should the need arise?
No, there's a mechanism to release water.
Okay.
The question is who's going to push the button?
Right. So the machine exists, the operator doesn't.
The machine exists. The functionality of that dam, the infrastructure, allows for the releases. The water's there, obviously, but allows for the release.
Any other question? Chris or Scott, it's my understanding that that we're going to push the button, but only when someone else
Directs us.
tells us to push the button.
Right.
Okay, I just want to be sure.
Commissioner Torres, I think.
Mr. Torres?
Yeah, I think I heard Commissioner Patel's question is the folks at the federal level and the environmentalists and all these folks know what the situation is. General public somehow may not know what's going on. And having this uncertainty about who's going to push the button, if something does happen, the people that are going to be looked at and the finger pointing is going to be at the MDC. And I think that's the issue that is being raised here, is that, you know, it's all fine and dandy, you know, there are some legal things out there that are being done, but in the final analysis, if something were to happen and that button isn't pushed, the folks that are going to be blamed, you know, for whatever happens is going to be the MDC. Similar to this, the issue we had with the leaching into the river from the landfill and all that kind of thing, where we knew that, you know, had to be repaired, but ultimately the state wasn't going to do it, and we were going to be blamed for it if it wasn't fixed. It's those kinds of things that I think are, you know, out there that have a repercussion in terms of having the MDC become the recipient of the ire, you know, of the community, the folks out there, because perhaps that information, the clarity of that information, you know, isn't getting out there to folks that this is what's happening, and the decision has to be made because we're not really in charge anymore.
I think that's one of what you've described and what Commissioner Patel's described is the impetus for us sitting down with the senator, with the representative, and not objecting to the bill that related to Colebrook Reservoir, not working against it because it had dealt with some releases or the involvement of DEEP, whatever it might be, but really finding a way to make that bill not just a statement, but in reality, something that's going to help those people, those same people, because there'll be someone charged with making that decision on releases in those, and the Army Corps will agree to order the release.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chris. Move on now to report from MDC Employee Diversity Committee.
Good evening. I'm Rita Kelly. I'm the EEO officer. And we're going to do a presentation today on the MDC Multicultural Diversity Committee. And before we started, I wanted to give a very brief history of the Diversity Committee within the MDC, so people have a greater understanding of it. It's not new. We've had a MDC Diversity Committee for about 13 years. For 10 years, it was primarily operated through EO and also the Human Resources Department, along with Luz Amaro, who's a strategic specialist here at MDC. And we all worked together and we invited staff to work with us to develop diversity events. However, around the time of the COVID, because of the quarantine, we were not able to meet. And about a year and a half ago, the CEO, Scott Jellison, decided that we really should reinvigorate the committee and take a look at it and see if there are ways that we could strengthen it and make it, you know, more reflective of our employees and the issues that they face as it relates to how they see diversity and how they want the MDC to value diversity. So the Human Resources Division, Olga Cordova, and myself were charged with taking a look at it and working with the members of the Diversity Committee. And what we decided is that in the past, we've pretty much taken the leadership role, EEO and Human Resources, but we really felt this was an initiative that should be employee-led and employee-driven. You know, we have some really incredible employees with a lot of ideas in terms of what diversity is, and they represent diversity, and it's important that they have the power to actually drive the diversity committee. So we decided that the committee would be employee driven and employee led. And we developed a new structure for the committee that included a chair and a vice chair that would work with other volunteers to define what were the important issues for us relating to diversity, to actually develop programs and initiatives that would really highlight, you know, what our concerns and what our issues were in a way that we all could celebrate, you know, the diverse department that we are, the diverse agency that we are. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to the chair, Bettina Smith, to say more about the exciting things that they've done.
Hello, everyone. My name is Retina Smith, and I'm a principal account representative here at the Metropolitan District. I have to first say that it's truly an honor to be before you today to talk about an awesome initiative happening here at the district. This initiative, which has become a drive for positive change, is the Multicultural Diversity Committee. I'm the chair of the committee. I'm joined today by my co-chair, Frank Cahill, and Jessica Coelho, who is our editor for our newsletter. We're very excited, and together we will be making and giving you a brief summary of what the committee has been up to since our relaunch in 2023, thanks to CEO Scott Johnston. Originally established about 10 years ago, we hosted a lot of launch and learn events. I was encouraged by an ex-employee, Marcy Wright, to get involved. I love diversity and I loved history and honoring all of our cultures as a whole. MDC encompasses that, and I loved it. I joined immediately. We issued a lot of educational and inspirational emails and postings, and it was very invigorating to see that there was value in each of our differences and abilities. We also help collectives and various charities to help with the community, things that were going on in the community. We help to basically offset and support the community initiatives that were going on. In 2023, the committee was reestablished after a peak in COVID. We decided to start first with a relaunch activity in which we just all came together to basically lunch and learn again. Now I'm going to turn the microphone back over to Frank Cahill. He's going to go through the committee structure, and I'll be back to see you.
Thank you, Retina. My name is Frank Cahill, project manager in the MDC construction department. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of how the committee is divided and how we organize ourselves so we can get how we've gotten things done since we've restarted last year. So the committee is made up of 14 volunteers, members appointed by the CEO. We represent a diverse cross-section of the workforce, covering multiple departments within the district. We're currently led by our chair, Retina, that you just met, myself as the vice chair, with administrative support provided by Rita Kelly and Olga. The committee is further broken down into 3 subcommittees to help us organize and establish division of labor and to get things accomplished. So we have our community outreach, which comes up with ideas and thoughts on how we can help district communities benefit the community through food drives for Mercy House in Hartford. Currently, we're working on helping Trinity College Hands on Hartford collection with food, snacks, school supplies and such. And then we're also discussing further ways we can help the community through clothing drives, school supplies, snacks, food, non-perishable foods. We also have a quarterly newsletter. It's led by Jessica. Jessica is going to give us a further detail on that. Our first newsletter was issued June 2023, and the last one was, most recent one was in March 2024. So we've had 4 of them, and they've all had positive feedback from fellow employees and those who've read them. Jessica's done, and company have done a great job. Lastly is the events committee. The events committee, currently what we have done, or we plan on doing, is 1 major event per year, which we had this year in March, which was a huge success. Again, very positive feedback from everybody. We had a fantastic speaker, Patricia Kelly from Ebony Horsewoman, that again, fantastic reviews on her presentation. Couldn't say anything more positive. It was just overwhelmingly positive. And so we are also, this is such a huge success, it is hard to top that. We've already started discussions on next year's events and what we're going to be doing. So we're hoping to at least match what we did this year. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. I am Jessica Coelho, Project Manager in the Engineering Department. As they said, I am one of the members of the newsletter committee. There are 4 of us. We have Omar Khan, myself, Retina Smith, and Beth Melendez, who assist in putting this out quarterly. I had the silly idea of trying to do it monthly, and thank goodness we didn't, because it is a lot. Basically, we have every quarter we try to focus on the holidays and days of observance in those 3 months, and we usually highlight in specifically a few key ones for that particular issue. And when we can, we try to even find some employees that want to give us insight into their own families, traditions, and cultures for one of those holidays, and we try to highlight that as well. We find, and I don't know if you guys would agree, we find that food brings us all together. So there's nothing more in touch with someone's culture and traditions than sharing our food recipes with each other. So we encourage the employees to share their own recipes that we will post as well. So we always have a recipe in each quarter. We also will look to the time of year it is. For instance, last time was spring, which also had Women's History Month, and we will try to find book recommendations and podcast recommendations we can share with everyone, usually based on things that the committee or employees have actually read or listened to that they think would be useful. We also will do the same with poetry that's on theme for that quarter. We even include sometimes some craft ideas that you can do with a family, and employee spotlights as well. So we have been trying to, it's a little tough to get some employees to want to do this, but we are trying to encourage them to want to answer a few questions about where they come from, you know, their family's traditions, where they've traveled to, just a little spotlight on one of our own personal awesome MDC employees. And we also highlight MDC and local events. So MDC events, of course, if anything's going on, we're going to mention it. And we try to look up what's going on in the district. So if there's a particular festival going on, you know, we have apple festivals, pumpkin festivals, all sorts of things, depending on the time of year, where the fireworks are going to be displayed, that sort of thing. We try to include that so everyone knows what's going on in the district. And lastly, we do puzzles. So whether it be a word search or a crossword, just a simple little puzzle that we put at the back of the newsletter. Sort of encourages participation, makes sure someone's reading it, and we ask people to send it back, and a completed puzzle gets entered for a small drawing. We will have 3 winners of a small prize every time. The next few slides, if Victoria wouldn't mind just flipping through, these are just some images of what they look like. They've gotten better every time. You can just keep on going there, Victoria. So I actually brought in today, for anyone's in the room, our most recent spring edition, which is by Victoria. So if anyone wants to grab one on the way out today, you're welcome to take a look. You can see we highlight all sorts of different things, events, things going on that time of the season. And it's been pretty good. Some people have reached out and said they really enjoy it. So thank you.
In conclusion, I just want to say that there's truly knowing and, you know, growing in knowing. We know a lot more about our coworkers, the people that we're working with. This also spills off into our community, and it helps us within the district. I did miss a slide. I wanted to go back to the mission statement, but I'll just go ahead and read it. The mission for the Multicultural Diversity Committee is to celebrate and promote diversity within our organization by fostering a culture of inclusion and respect for all individuals, regardless of their race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, ability, or background, to promote a safe and welcoming environment that promotes openness, acceptance, and understanding through the exchange of ideas and perspectives. Also to develop and implement programs and initiatives that celebrate the diversity of the organization and the communities we serve. The members of the community would like to say thank you for the opportunity to celebrate and promote the multitude of talents, cultures, and experiences within our organization. As we continue our journey towards multicultural wellness, we look forward to making strides to uphold a culture of greatness here at the Metropolitan District. Thank you for listening.
Questions? Commissioner.
Commissioner Anderson, I'm looking for submissions. Where do we send submissions for the newsletter?
Jessica?
Sure, while I'm here. Hello there. Oh, we would love submissions. Yes, all ideas, please. If you could send them to Rita Kelly, and she can make sure they get in the right hands. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Mandyke here. I just want to applaud all of you. I think it's fabulous what you're doing. And I also want to suggest that maybe if we could the commissioners please get an email with the newsletters so we can also read them quarterly so we can see what's happening. And I thought it looked great. I'd love to read it. So I think that would be great. And last but not least, I know that we're considering the climate culture study. And I would encourage that if that does go through, that this group actually be an integral part of that, since they are impacting a great deal of the climate here at MDC. And I think their views and their input into that would be very welcome into that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I've gone to two. I went to the one this year and the one last year, and I would really encourage other commissioners to go. It's really a great time. It's really an amazing, well put together program.
Other questions? I have one for Rita. Is the mission statement part of our affirmative action plan?
No, the mission statement is a separate one. It's a mission statement that was developed by the group itself. When we did the restructuring, we all met together in terms of what we all wanted and what we thought was important. So it is separate from the affirmative action plan. It solely focuses on diversity, not employment.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all again. Next is referral of sewer petition for Wolcott Hill Road, Wethersfield, Wethersfield, the Bureau of Public Works. Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved. Again.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. Next, Board of Finance, consideration, potential action, approval of state of Connecticut financing, the DWSRF 2023-7120. Is there a motion to receive, report, and adopt resolution?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Discussion?
It's passed unanimously at the Board of Finance, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Fleming. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next, under Bureau of Public Works, consideration, potential action at 700 Asylum Ave, West Hartford, cost sharing agreement.
17.
Cost sharing agreement.
Sorry.
Recommended action, receive report, adopt resolution. We have a motion?
Move the item.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next is retroactive reimbursement of customer sewer repairs. Recommended action, receive report, and adopt resolution. I would only say that While we have discussion, I'm hoping we're going to have discussion. I would suggest that it be referred to the government committee based on that discussion. Why don't I turn it over to Chris, District Counsel, to explain the process that would occur should this body determine that reimbursement should be some form be approved.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris Stone. Well, I think the first issue is in your referral, if it is referred to the government committee, I assume it would be to develop an ordinance or modification to the existing ordinance that provides for the relief for certain individuals or homeowners from one date moving forward, and to consider within the government committee whether or not to amend that ordinance to provide for two things. One is moving that date to some retroactive date, whatever that might be. And two is, and perhaps to substantively as to that ordinance, changing that ordinance so that it would address situations like that facing Mrs. Bryden. Thank you, John. Mrs. Bryden, and perhaps others. Because as you know, the program is designed for a complete 100% sewer or lateral restoration, lining, whatever it might be, but you get a full lateral. That wasn't the case in Mrs. Bryden's situation, and it may not be the case in other situations. She has, I won't say an unusual, but somewhat unique situation in that she has a very long lateral, so to speak, that goes through private property to another person's property. And it's a portion of that lateral, not the whole lateral, but a portion of that lateral that had to be repaired. Even if we move the date back, if the language in the ordinance stays the same otherwise, she would not be covered. And others like her, I don't want to concentrate solely on Mrs. Bryden, but others similarly situated individuals would not be covered. So if the idea is to address in whole the concern by Ms. Bryden and other similarly situated customers, then it has to be a twofold thing: go retroactive to a certain date, whatever that might be, and also modify the terms of the ordinance. I was asked at the last meeting whether, and I didn't get a chance to answer, but whether we can treat, and matter of fact, she asked for tonight, her situation as just, so unique that, find some other way to reimburse her. There is no other way to reimburse her under our ordinances. And we're a body of ordinances. We follow the ordinances. This is what it provides presently. And presently, as that ordinance reads, she's not covered. To pay on or reimburse her for a situation that's not otherwise the responsibility of the MDC is not allowed under our ordinances. So you may want to, I think, to the chairman's credit, this is not kicking the can down the road. This is moving it to a committee that can take an action, recommend an action, develop an ordinance obviously with the assistance of myself and Scott and his people, and bring it back to you for consideration. And I think having a general discussion is helpful, but I think you've got to, I think it's probably more productive to have something to look at, to review, to modify as necessary, and have it open to the public. I'm sure Chairman Pisano would see to this presently and have the appropriate meetings and also the public hearing necessary for any ordinance and move this thing down the road, if that's what this committee so chooses.
Question?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman. I guess one of my concerns here is, are we giving any thought to those people? And I want to be very careful here. What happens in the case of the lady from West Hartford? Was that a standard sewer hookup? I mean, was that something that was put together because of where her house is? Under the normal course, would that have been part of the standard engineering design practice. I mean, I normally think of a lateral as it goes from the house to the street, there's a sewer that comes down the road. If we have someone in that kind of situation, do we take a second look, give that consideration? Because I guess what I would be concerned about, and Mr. Patel, I think I would look to you to help me with this, is once again, I have an idea of what, when someone says a house with a lateral, goes from the house to the street. But in her case, it's going through private property. Was that engineered because of some special set of circumstances? Was that something we weren't involved in? I mean, what is it? Because I think that that's something that we need to think of. Maybe I'm sort of complicating things here, but that, I guess that's one of my concerns here. If it's one of these things where it's a kind of special, strange situation, and then as time goes on, then, you know, you have to make changes or modifications. Do we think about that in terms of bringing that into conformance to what I would view as sort of standard practices? In other words, it goes from the house to the street. But, you know, once again, you know, I'm concerned about that, that's all.
Right, I apologize. I broke my own rule. I'll entertain a motion to refer to government committee for discussion purposes.
So moved.
Second. All right, now we've got a motion on the floor to refer to committee. And Commissioner Taylor, I would only say there's probably more than a few of us at this table that may share your concern, but this is simply a referral. When it goes to government, I think that would be the appropriate time for this type of conversation. The government committee will look at the ordinance. As District Council said, there's two issues. One is the simple issue of just changing the date. If that is the will of the government committee in the ordinance. The second issue is, of course, dealing with those what's been referred to as one-offs that are much different than what Al just described as a typical lateral. So are there any discussions as it relates to referral to government committee? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Brings us to opportunity for general public comments. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the board? Seeing none, our work here. Oh, we have one more on the second page. Commissioner requests for future agenda item. Seeing none, we've completed the agenda and I declare this meeting adjourned.
Yes, yes, sir.
Pretty good.
Percent.